Engines. Let's talk about engines. So engines in general, or internal combustion engines. With BMW and in general, it's a difficult story. So in terms of BMW, it's a really great example where you can see how engine development is and where it is going, especially on the European market. I think BMW is going to X all the engines that are not at least mild hybrids. That is when you have a 48 volts onboard power supply that can assist the engine a little bit in setting off so that your start-stop fuel consumption is not as high. And it's the only way at the moment to fulfill the European requirements, the European emissions standards. And this is not a mild hybrid, this is a full-blown ICE. So this engine is going to go, and you can see that when you look at the 7 Series, the new 7 Series. BMW was just releasing that or presenting that, I think a couple of weeks ago. And looking at the engine choices here in Europe at least, it's pretty grim. You cannot have a V8 or a straight 6 engine anymore, at least not as a pure internal combustion engine, only in combination with an electric engine or with an electric motor. So only as a plug-in hybrid. I think BMW does not make full hybrids. And we have to talk about the different hybrid types. We're going to do that another time. So the thing is, the 760, the last generation 760 was a V12 5 point something liter. Don't quote me on that, but it was a big V12 engine. And the 760 from this generation, from the new one that was just released, is a straight 6-cylinder engine. So that means for the same car with the same kind of power, I guess, even BMW X'd half the cylinders. So it has half the number of cylinders that the previous generation 760 has. But of course it has a big or a pretty powerful electric motor that helps with the power delivery. And I think that's the right way to go. Unless you're on a racetrack, you usually don't need all the power all the time. You just need some to overtake, to accelerate, and then the electric motor can help. It produces, I think, 560 horsepower, 570 horsepower, somewhere along these lines. And I mean, that's enough. If the petrol engine produces, let's say, 300, 400 of that, that's plenty to just cruise along. If you want to accelerate, you combine these two engines, the electric motor and the internal combustion engine, and then you have like your 500, 600 horsepower, whatever. And that is in my opinion, the right way to go. But that's the future. And of course, the new 7 Series is also available as an i7, which means a pure electric car. And that's, of course, also a development that we were going to have. And that is, I think it's not going to be this long before new petrol engines are a thing of the past. Well, that sounds weird, but yeah. Because I don't know, there's a new Euro norm coming up, and I heard that it's basically impossible to fulfill that with an internal combustion engine. So yeah, it's a little bit sad, like especially if you have engine like this one. That's a sad goodbye. It sounds great, it feels great, but let's see what the future holds. And while we're at it, let's talk about electric engines. Now, I remember reading a couple of years back that the Fraunhofer Institute, a place where I used to work, announced a new kind of battery development or new breakthrough in battery development. And they were saying that if you would put these kinds of batteries in an electric car, it would have a 2,000 kilometer electric range. And a little while later, Mercedes announced that as of 2035 or something like that, they're not going to make new combustion engines, or they're not going to develop new combustion engines anymore. And I thought, yeah, I think at this point, in my opinion, they cracked the 1,000 kilometer mark for the electric range. And of course you don't get that right away. They're going to drip it into the market step by step. Last year it was 660 kilometer range, this year it's 780. Tesla has a car, I think, with 860. And then they're going to drip it slowly but steadily into the market until you get to your 1,000, 1,200, 1,100 or whatever kilometer range. But that's an interesting development, because the electric car, they're turning their weakness, the range, into their strength. Think about that. If you're driving an electric car, or if you're owning an electric car, that has like a 1,200 kilometers electric range, you just fill it up when you set off. You go on your long journey, like the one that I did yesterday, 1,100 kilometers. You get to your hotel, you fill it up overnight, and next day you set off. You don't have to do any fuel stops at all anymore. None. You fill it up and you go. Before you go, then you fill it up overnight, wherever you are, and the next day you continue on. That is pretty awesome. That is a pretty big advantage over the petrol car, or over the diesel car, or over the internal combustion engine. The problem so far with the internal combustion engine is, of course, well, the good thing, the upside of the internal combustion engine is, of course, that the density of energy storage. I don't know really how to explain this, but the amount of energy that you can store in a fuel tank, a tank full of petrol, a tank full of diesel, if you are about to store the same amount of energy. So like, okay, what do we have here? We have a 2-ton car, and I got 800 kilometers out of one 68-liter tank. So that's about 70 kilograms. So that's 70 kilograms that got a 2-ton car 800 kilometers. That in and of itself, it's pretty amazing. But if you think about that, it is a 530 horsepower V8, that's a whole different story. But anyway, if you were about to get the same range out of an electric storage battery, basically, it weighs, I don't know, 500 kilograms or 600 kilograms maybe. So that's a lot more, because the energy density, the storage density, whatever you call that, blanking on the word right now, but whatever you call that, is a lot higher in the petrol. That's why it prevailed. The electric car and the combustion engine car, they've been developed about at the same time. And the ICE car just prevailed because, yeah, the energy storage is just so much higher. You get so much further with one, or you get so much further with a certain amount of chemical storage mass than you get with an electric car. But if that's about to change, yeah, then that's a big plus. If they crack the 1,000 kilometer mark, I think then even people like me who basically do exclusively long road trips with cars, I don't have a car because I live right where I work, even people like me will go for the electric car then, because it's way more convenient. I don't have to do fuel stops anymore. No hotel, or At least I don't know one. But usually hotels don't have a petrol station, but every hotel has electricity. And that's another thing that speaks for the electric car, for the electric motor in cars. And that's the abundance of, or the availability of the energy. Most countries, I think, don't have oil resources. You're dependent on other countries to deliver them to you. You can't make electricity. Electricity comes out of your socket in your home. You don't have a petrol station at home. And I know there's a lot of electricity that's produced with oil, coal and gas, but there are other ways too. Like if this fusion shit gets going, then there's definitely, that's I think the end of any other energy production method. I mean, I think I'm in favor of producing energy with the so-called regenerative, renewable energy. It's just that electricity is way more abundant than petrol. It just is. Put a couple of solar panels on your roof. Like, somebody calculated the size that you need, or the area that you need with solar panels to charge an electric car for daily use, for the daily commute. I don't know what value they were taking, some average. And they calculated that the area that you need for your solar panels in order to charge up your electric car for daily use is about the area that the car needs to be parked in. So again, that's a huge advantage for electric cars. The biggest problem is just the storage, just the energy storage, batteries. That's the biggest problem. If they can crack the solid state stuff, that would be a huge advantage. But so far, batteries are dirty, batteries are heavy. But for now, I'm pretty glad that we still have petrol engines because I'm enjoying them very much, which is pretty selfish because, yeah, environment stuff. But yeah, I think the carbon footprint of a ICE car is not that much worse of that one from an electric car. I just would personally prefer to have an electric car because of the abundance of electricity. I don't have a petrol station, but I have access to electricity. Yeah. But let's see how that develops. In any event, electric cars are catching on, despite what everybody says.